Enabling yourself or enabling others just might be the most important virtue for a leader in the future. Welcome to this masterclass about enabling leadership. And my name is Jürgen Moors. For many years, I've done exactly that. I was an enabling leader inside a large corporation. Now, why is enabling leadership so important? Well, if you look at a lot of leadership models these days, they all try to simplify the world. But if we have learned one thing over the last couple of decades is that the world is getting more and more complex. And one beautiful theory that I brought to practice is complexity leadership, because it takes into account the fact that the world is complex. And it will not get easier. It will not get simpler. It will become more complex in comparison to the day where we are today. Now, let me start maybe with a story. I've all my life worked in the chemical and the oil and gas industry and in the pharmaceutical industry. And around the year 2014, 2015, this industry became under a certain amount of strain. Prices of oil were down, and the need for an efficiency increase was necessary. Now, at that point in time, one looks at many directions, and in this case, in the time frame at where we was, they also started looking at robotics. Could we use robotics in the chemical industry or in the oil and gas industry for purposes like doing certain tasks of the operator, doing certain inspection tasks, doing certain maintenance tasks? Now, if you look today, 2024, drones are used a whole lot. If you look at warfare, if you look at industry, if you look at in this personal space, drones are in our lives. In 2015, they were not. Now, how could we bridge this gap? And what we saw was that there were two major players. We had, of course, the oil and gas industry with its running operations. And let's move into these running operations. Here you have the operations managers, the plant managers. They are pushed for their budget, for the amount of people that they employ. Every piece of revenue is made by them. The more efficient they are, the better it is. Now, this also means that they have a constant strain on budgets, a constant strain on resources. And when you talk to them about innovation, for them, it's additional money, it's additional time, it's something that they don't want to bother for. But the second thing is, when we talk about innovation in their area, is that's also a risk. This industry has pledged itself on safety. It's also rather conservative because we've done this for such a long time and we know it works. And incremental innovation is their part, small steps without big risks. So these people are not looking for innovation, especially not if there are certain risks or if there are a certain amount of money bound to that. Now let's cross the gap to the other side. This is the world where these ideas of entrepreneurs, these robotic entrepreneurs are living. They came up with the ideas around how can I use drones? How can I optimize my drones? Different type of drones that can fly upside down. Same thing for robots that can walk around like a dog, robots that can drive around, robots that can drive up against a wall because the wall is magnetic and the robot uses some kind of magnetic system. At the same time, it can make pictures and do infrared measurements and all kinds of stuff. They have so many ideas, but they need guidance. They don't know what that industry wants. They don't know what that plant manager wants. They need cash. They need projects to come from idea and concepts to demonstrators to pilots to learn, because for them, a lot of them are robotic engineers. They start with a chip and with some basic electrics. But if you look and you go to this guy's world, he will tell you, this is not usable in my industry. We've got something like explosion proof equipment. You need a certain ATEX label or explosion proof label. And this guy will tell you, yeah, but we now also have something with a measurement device on it, so you know when there's an explosive atmosphere, you can shut it down. You can now bring it into your tank, or you can now drive it around on your premises. It works perfectly in the lab. We have these cables. And then you go over to this guy, and this guy again tells you yeah, but that's not the case. We cannot use it this way. We have regulation when it comes to electrical wires that you use and how they should look like. And the distance that you're talking about, you only have 3 meters of cable, but it's about 50 meters away from where there is actually a point where you can get electricity. Or this person will tell you look, this thing almost falls down if you look at it. If something happens and there is wind, it probably will fall down. I'm not risking this, that somebody get this on top of his head and somebody dies or gets an injury for that, because that's my metrics that I'm looked at. And how much money are we talking about? $50,000 or euros just for a test? Are you crazy? I don't have this in my budget. Now, how do you bring those two worlds together? On the one hand side, the operational world, where everything is about efficiency. And on the other hand side, there you have the entrepreneurial world, where everything is about risks, about innovations, taking a leap of faith. Not an easy case. I can tell you that. Try to sell where they are to a very experienced maintenance manager, to a very experienced plant manager, to a very experienced operations manager, or their boss. They will not go for it. They will not take the risk. They will not use the budget. What's their conclusion, do you think? Well, they get disappointed. They get frustrated. But on top of that, because you see two worlds, they also have a different language. These guys are talking about efficiency. Everything is about money. Everything is about safety. What will it do to my safety performance? What will it do to my efficiency performance in general? How long does it take to develop? Is it something that I test twice and then I can roll out en masse? Or does it have a development path of 2 years? This is something they don't believe in because it takes them way too long. They think short term because they bring benefit to the company on the short term, and the company is looked at on the short term. If you look at these guys, their language is long term. Their guys is dreaming. These guys are, and these women are hoping for the future to change the world. Some of them are even hoping for a huge boost and an IPO, and can bring them into the future and they can become millionaires. And somebody else doesn't look at their vision. This is what we are looking at as an entrepreneur. The complexity leadership, that was what we were talking about. The complexity leadership looks at this from bringing an innovation into a large corporation is exactly a complex thing. You have two different worlds that look at the world in a completely different way. You have two different languages. You have completely different metrics. They talk about shareholders. They talk about investor value. They talk about venture capitalists. These are often young people. These are established, experienced executives, managers. They've grown up often in a world where we manage stuff. They are growing up, often in a world where we take risks and trial and error. That's not something you can do there. And that is exactly where the enabling leadership, the enabler, comes in. It is the leader, it is the person, it is the art, because I call it an art, where you make a bridge, where you build a bridge between those who are in the entrepreneurial world and those who are in the operational world. And if you do this in a correct way, then you will see that innovation can flow from one side to another side. Now, to come back to the example that I gave you before about robotics, now what was done? How was it solved? Well, an organization was formed. In this case, sprintrobotics.org. And they had exactly that enabling role as part of them. People from the asset owners, as it is called, from the oil and gas industry, from the chemical industry, maintenance managers, operations managers, innovation managers, they were part of that organization, sprintrobotics.org. And on the other hand side, you had the whole value chain that would need to be changed. Those who built the robotic solutions, those who built the robots, those who would use them to do inspections, all of them were also part of this whole chain, which was then brought together in Sprint Robotics. And people started to work together and talk together in projects, starting to understand. People were ready to take a risk under this umbrella. Now, at that time, I was also working for a large chemical company, and we had the initiative about Sprint Robotics, and we were part of that, we joined that. But at the same time, I, as a leader, I had to do this inside my own company because I was in a central role, partially focused on innovation and on bringing efficiency in general forward. So I had to be this enabling leader. I had to be the internal Sprint Robotics. Now, it helped that I was, for a while, a long time, in this part of the world. I understand operations. I can talk to maintenance managers, operations managers, production managers. I know their world. I've done their job. I've been an asset manager. I've been a maintenance manager. I've been an operations manager. I know what they do. I know their problems. I know their metrics. And luckily, I've also been partially in this world. I spent some time in a very innovative environment inside the company where we had our own VC or venture capital. We had our own innovation unit. Most of our innovation was done externally with a group throughout the value chain, the future value chain. So I learned their language. I understood their problems. I knew that they had to prove something on the short term, where they often were also delivering on the short term, but were more focused on the long term. So I also understand them very well. And this is where this enabler role is basically being a translator, a creator of opportunities, and a creator of opportunities in two different worlds. And that's the way you build the bridge and bring them together. I knew they needed funding. They needed opportunities and chances to test. And they also needed something that they could bring their efficiency forward without risks, at the same time without risking or bringing a huge budget. Now, one of the advantages I had is I had a certain amount of innovation budget. And when I talked to them, I searched out those people, those managers, those leaders that had a basic interest in innovation. And I talked to them and I said, look, will you try something for me? Will you give me the opportunity to test something? In advance, I will take the check. So it's not off your budget, it's off the innovation budget. I will prepare everything for you so you don't need to worry. We will sit down on a regular basis so you know exactly what will happen. We will clear this with all the groups that you think are necessary. What's the safety unit? What is the inspection unit? We will bring them around the table. I will organize it. It is not your hustle. It's my hustle. It is my responsibility. And so I could convince certain people to work along, and we always started with lower risks projects and worked our way up to the more, let's say, complex and more risky projects. I went to the world over here and I said to them, look, I know this world, I know their problems, and I started working with them. I said to them, look, this is what we can do. This is the budget that I can spend. This is the worries that I have. How can we make sure that we tackle them one at a time? And with the rest of that value chain, when we focused on one type of robot, we looked at all the aspects that were discussed there. Like, do you understand what explosion proof means? Do you understand what the aspects of electrical safety mean? Do you understand what safety in general means? How you should behave, how we can deploy, what the rules are, how you have to comply, what is not, and what are don'ts and what are do's. Those aspects we also prepared in advance. So that was basically my task, bringing those worlds together, making sure that they understood each other. Once when they were ready, we brought them together around the table, or I brought them again around the table. We went through it all again. And that way, I tackled a big part of their worries, and I solved a lot of their issues, but not all. And now we could start deploying and testing. So we started with demonstrators. Then we started with a demonstrator that was industrial ready, and we started piloting until the point where we actually came out with a qualification program and actually qualified it in this world. At each point in time, we made sure that in the very, very beginning, I took up all of the work, the worries, the budget on the enabling role and not on the two other roles. And slowly we built this bridge towards each other. And the more we evolved through the path, you would see two things. This world would become more and more enthusiastic and would see the opportunities. They could see slowly the dollar signs, the euro signs, the cash in their eyes, the potential efficiency leap they could make. And as time progressed, they would start with investing smaller amount of resources, smaller amounts of budget, until they were so sure to adopt it. This world started to understand how this world works. All of the regulations, all of the rules, written and non-written, all of the expectations that were for the robots started slowly being integrated, and the startup companies, the entrepreneurial world, grew up with a basic understanding of the oil and gas industry and, for instance, the chemical industry. This is what happened in my company, but this is also something that we realized with Sprint Robotics as a whole of an organization. This is like we tackled that. Now, once we had the first examples, I could search out in my own company those people who would take a risk, who've done it once before and would try again. And they would then take on their own projects, would preserve small amount of budgets. Let's be honest, they always had a small amount of budget. They were just not sure enough to use it or deploy it for that. They would rather take it for something that they believed in, something they understood. And by giving them this path, this way, they started to understand. So they would also be more open to spend the budget on that. And they would become sponsors of certain projects. Now, at the same time here, because they worked with different groups, they started building relationships. They started getting one-on-one from, I'm looking at a new type of robot or a new evolution. What should we do better in comparison with the next time? And after a while, that way my role as an enabler was becoming smaller. And this is the way that you also know as an enabling leadership, that the bridge is slowly being built and slowly being completed, and that your work in that area or that specific area is over and you can focus on something else. Because if you look at it myself, I had to do it for drones, so flying robots, I had to do it for crawling robots, swimming robots. So there were areas enough to focus upon. We started with one and slowly build our way up to the next level. And that's the beauty of an enabling leadership. But throughout the story, I also told you some of the concepts that are behind complexity leadership and enabling leadership. Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into these very specific terminologies. Now, if we look at the complexity leadership, there are three basic areas. This side I already talked to you about. This is the world, or the world of entrepreneurship. Here we stand. Here's the entrepreneurial leader. On that hand side, we find the operational leader, the world of operations. And in the middle, there's a huge gap, or there was a huge gap, which is now being bridged by the enabling leadership, or by the enabler, the enabling leader. Now, if they are very far apart, these three worlds, there are still bubbles in themselves that are not linked. So you need to find ways to link it. And I already told you one way to do it here. You can do it here by finding the right sponsor, those sponsors, those who want to risk something, those who want to connect these worlds. So search sponsors, sponsorships, volunteers, people who want to take a small risks, but give them an incentive. Take part of that budget as an enabler for you, or something like that. On the other hand side, you have to start linking. You have to create these linkages so that people start to understand the industry they are going in. They start to understand the rules, the regulations, way of behavior, but also conflicting, because their view and their view, at a certain point in time, it will conflict. So bringing those conflicts to the front and looking at how can we solve these conflicts, how are we going to tackle these issues, because those are break or make or die issues. So there you will have to focus upon to make sure that you can bring those worlds together. And those are some basic terminologies about complexity leadership. We have the entrepreneurial leadership, we have the operational leadership, and in the middle, we have the enabling leadership. And to bring them together, we have on the one hand side sponsorship, and we have here linking up, conflicting, to make sure that that is all brought together. And this is the way that you approach any innovation, basically. Now, another question could be, does it always, or is it always necessary? These are three different worlds, or three different people. No? There are leaders that, like me, spend some time in this world, and made sure they also gained the skills of the enabling world that they could combine. And depending on where they are in a role, that they could take up any of the roles that you see. In my last role, I was an operational manager. But because I understood them very well, I both had traits, or I brought in my own traits as an entrepreneur, and I brought in my traits as an enabler. So I could play this role, and depending on which project in the digital world or in the digitalization that I tried to do for my unit, I could take up one or another. So I could move it. But it can be, of course, that you have a very entrepreneurial operational manager, or very enabling operations manager, who can move in this area as well, and it can bridge to the entrepreneurial world. Or on the other hand side, maybe you have somebody that once worked in a large corporation, understands how corporations work, not necessarily the business that he focuses upon right now, but he can take the role partially as an enabler. Bring in, via subsidies, for instance, the opportunity for this person, the operational manager, or the operational world, to do some tests, and that way get part of the funding that this person, for instance, and part of the backing what these persons are typically looking for. So it's not necessarily that you need three different people for the different roles. It can be one people, it can be two people, it can be a combination. This is something that depends on, okay, who is at hand for the moment, for the project, for the organization, or whatever. Now, the example that I gave you focuses very heavily on the outside world. How do we bring innovations inside a company? But you don't have to look this far if you go to large organizations. For instance, if you look at a large organization like I worked in for a long time, or the world where I worked in for a long time, the oil and gas and the chemical pharmaceutical industry, what you typically find are a huge amount of silos. You have HR, you have safety, you have finance, you have operations, you have marketing, you have sales, and many, many more. There are so many silos. And if you look at it from a distance, then you see that a lot of those silos often, very often, they have different goals, they have different KPIs, people are looking at different things, they have different budgets, people don't work together. So this quality, this skill set as an enabler, as an enabling leadership, doesn't help you just outside to bring innovations from the entrepreneurial world into the operational world, but it also helps you to cross the bridges between the different silos in a company. Here you have sales, here you have marketing, we have operations, we have HR. As an enabler, and the skill set that you have gathered helps you to also bridge these different aspects inside your own company. So you can benefit already from it inside your own company if you master the enabling leader skill set. Now, this might be looking, or it might look hard to do, might look hard to learn. But basically, it is not. It is taking some of the entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial skill set and drawing it in to yourself as a person, as an enabler, or inside a larger organization. And there is a word for that. It is called intrapreneurship. It is a person that is still active inside a large corporation, but that adopted intrapreneurial and entrepreneurial skills so they could take exactly that role as an enabler or as an intrapreneur, meaning bringing those projects into the larger organization. What basically happens with intrapreneurship is that a larger organization, the operational world, built or taught itself enabling skills, or taught certain people enabling skills, so they could be the enabler leadership or the link or the bridge between the entrepreneurial on the outside and the operational world on the inside. At the same time, like I said, these people could highly use those skills also between the different silos. Now, let me tell you some advantages of this. There are a lot of advantages of being an entrepreneur, and a lot of people don't know that. If I look at myself and I look at some other entrepreneurs that I know very well, those people are a lot happier. Why? You look at it in a positive side. You know, because you've been or you put a step into this entrepreneurial world, you know you're going to fail and try again. You know that. So one failure doesn't ruin your mood. You're just going to go on. You learn something and you move on. Fail, learn, move on. And that makes you the trade in general, but also makes you more resilient when you're looking at bureaucracy and facing management. You're happier, you're more optimistic. So that's already one advantage of being an entrepreneur. These people, in the end, the entrepreneurs, they are highly sought after by your employer. Why? These are the people that make things move in this huge, conservative, slow operational world. They change things. They build networks internally, but also externally. They are often people whose career goes faster because they are so much sought after. So if you're interested in a career, if you're interested in accelerating your career, then why not take the risk to becoming an entrepreneur or to focus on entrepreneurship inside a large organization? You don't have to go outside the world. You can stay inside and still prosper. Impact. You have way more impact as an entrepreneur because you manage to, if you look at it from the internal side, to juggle the different silos, to bring them together, to join them. It's a trait highly sought after, and that's the way that you can create impact inside an organization. And if we enlarge it, you can bring innovations, risky projects, new things into your organization. You can help to change your organization. And this is the way that you can create an actual impact. There are so many people always complaining about the fact that they don't have any impact in their organization, especially here in the large organizations. Well, you can, but only if you want to become an enabler leader or, in this case, an intrapreneur. Because both are basically synonyms. Innovative. If you want to do innovativeness, this is your chance. Become an intrapreneur. You don't have to become a person who has his own startup, because some people say from now, I like it here because there's a certain convenience. My paycheck is there. My family relies on me. We still have a lot of down payments on our house, on our car. We have to go for that. Well, you can do and still bring innovativeness as this intrapreneur, as an enabling leader, without stepping actually outside and taking all the risks, and don't pay yourself a salary for a year or two. No, you can do it in this world, still in the safety of this world. So why would you not think about learning, experimenting with enabling leadership or entrepreneurship? If it makes you happier, gives you a chance of a faster career, brings you positivity, create more impact on your organization, and you have a chance to use that obsession that you have with innovativeness. And that is basically what this masterclass is all about. Telling you the importance in the complex world where we are today of enabling leaders, of enabling leadership, and what the exact word inside large organizations is, being an entrepreneur in intrapreneurship. Now, the goal of this masterclass, like I said in the beginning, was because to learn you what entrepreneurship, or at that point we didn't call it that way, what enabling leadership and complexity leadership was. Complexity leadership creates a picture how the world works and how we as a person, as an employee, can thrive in that world. And I honestly hope that you look at this complexity leadership model, the enabling leadership, and entrepreneurship in a very different way. And you look at it as an opportunity and a chance to change your world, to change your destiny, to change your company. Because one man can, one woman can. Because I've done that. I am the living proof of it. So why not start today? Why not take the next step and join my Intrapreneurship Unveiled online course? Everything that I talked to you about was about the bigger picture. In this course, I will go into more basic, the fundamentals. How did I do it? What is the pepper and salt, or what's the sand that makes everything grind, makes everything work? What's the oil to grease that? What's the oil that greases this bigger framework of complexity leadership, of enabling leadership, of entrepreneurship? If you're interested in that, if you want to go for that, if you want to change, if you want to be positive, if you want to have impact, then sign up today and start this testing and start this route to entrepreneurship. And I hope that this masterclass already taught you something, gave you something to think about. Maybe, but I think we will. We will see each other in Intrapreneurship Unveiled. Thank you very much for looking at this masterclass, and I really, really hope you take a chance with yourself. Bye-bye.